Exactly.
It's about 10:01. So I think that we should probably stay on track and stay on time. I know we have a lot of potential attendees. And so maybe by the time I'm done with just briefly introducing everybody uh, and we start the conversation, we'll have some folks that are ready to go. Welcome to Harnessing Nature for Health and Wellness at our very first Community Green Day at MGBCE. It's pretty cool that for the first time this year, we have opened this up to beyond practitioners and the municipality, and we are engaging the community. Our theme at MGBCE this year is equity. And I think you'll see that this particular panel is going to bring that home today. I want to get straight to the discussion, but I'm going to briefly introduce everybody, but I'll let everybody, the audience, know that everybody's full extensive bios are in the Whova app, as well as how to get in touch with them. So you'll be able to do that. Also, and my panelists, if you just want to say hello, so that when I'm done with your bio, people can put a name to a face, as your face will show up on the screen every time you talk. So I'll start with Brandy Williams. Is a small business owner of Garden Butterfly, founded in 2015. Brandy has combined her technical expertise in landscaping as a licensed contractor and her Master's of Art in Human Services to drive her passion for sustainable pollinator and food gardens in our city's residences and schools, becoming a leader in her industry and an ambassador to the community for these types of gardens. You want to say hi, Brandy?
Hi, everyone.
Charlene Demas Penato is the president and CEO of Wellnest. Fueled by her numerous credentials, degrees, and experience in mental health, Charlene is transforming the mental health experience through design and architecture, ensuring the first interface clients have promote healing through beauty, nature, and calming environments. Say hello, Charlene.
Hi, good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me this morning.
Karen Ramirez is the executive director of Root Down LA, a youth-led nonprofit. She advocates for food systems in South Central LA through empowering youth within the community to learn to grow, harvest, and prepare food from community garden hubs that will help level the food justice system playing field in South LA. Say hello, Karen.
Hi, everyone.
Clifford Francis is working to become an environmental physicist to improve the many urban dead spaces in the city through air quality monitoring and infusion of greenery to make them safer, more useful to the community, and healthier. Say hi, Clifford.
Hello, everyone. Happy to be here.
Rachel O'Leary is the program director of City Plants and a native Angelino. She has spent the last 5 years studying LA's urban forest to create a forestry management plan that utilizes one of our greatest resources, trees, to make LA's shade, nature, and beauty more accessible and distributed equitably throughout the city.
Hi, everyone. Rachel here. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Garrett Johnson is currently working on his Master's of Professional Studies in Sustainable Urban Planning and is a native Angelino. He hopes to use his expertise partnered with technology to revitalize underserved communities by making them greener, healthier, and safer places for the community. And my name is Cassie Awiagi. I am a LEED Insights accredited practitioner, a board member of USGBCLA, which is hosting this wonderful day, and president of Forum LA Landscaping. I believe that LA's authentic native beauty can save LA from drought, fire, floods, slides, all while improving our health and economic resilience. So I'm sure you can all see that there is a common theme here, and we've got just the experts to bring it home today. I'm going to start off with a question that I'd like everybody to think about and respond, but I'm going to start with Charlene. How has our understanding of health, nature, and architecture changed in the last 5 years?
Okay, so let me just, because I'm from a mental health agency, let me just share a little information about mental health. As you know, Wellness is a trauma-informed organization that has been providing services in South Los Angeles for 96 years for children from the moment they're born all the way up to the age of 25. And we expanded our core services to also include housing for young people who are emancipating from the foster care system or have been involved in the justice system. And according to the World Health Organization, 450 million people worldwide suffer from some mental health condition at any given moment. And that means at least 1 in 5 adults will experience a mental health illness in the course of a year. And with anxiety disorders is one of the most common issues. Over 21% of children ages 13 to 18 will also suffer from a mental health condition. Now, worldwide, that means that $2.5 trillion will be spent on mental health care. That means that by 2030, we will be spending up to $6 trillion, according to the National Institute of Mental Health. You know, that being said, that means that there is a definite link between mental health and economic productivity. And the cost of treating depression or anxiety or trauma is enormous. And when I refer to economic productivity, that means children being able to thrive in their educational environments, their home environments, their community, as well as their families, the adults that are caring for the children and families in their natural environments. Right now, we're in the midst of an unprecedented social health and economic volatility. And in the past month, we have seen more issues related to physical health that is even a greater threat to our mental health. And it is very important that we're seeing more and more concerns related to these issues, and especially in underserved, under-resourced communities where there are many health disparities. We're very, very concerned about how the environment really does matter. Now, emotions are triggered by the brain with emotions, with mental health issues as far as learning and everything I just mentioned. And so it's imperative that we start thinking about how can we engage our community to participate collaboratively with architecture and reimagining design and green space. So because there is an inherent role in how we can improve the mental health and physical health of individuals. We spend 80 to 90% of our time inside buildings. And so it's very important that we think about how we interact with not only the interior and the exterior of our environments. And so evidence clearly shows that a simple view of nature can radically improve those health outcomes that I mentioned earlier. So it's important that we start thinking about green space. And because by creating green space, it makes a difference into how we can leverage successfully some of these areas that people are struggling with when they do not have access to environments that are conducive to wellness and health. And there's so many ways that we can create some of these environments that are conducive to that. And green space is beneficial to all of these health benefits. And that includes encouraging exercise, providing space for socializing, decreasing noise pollution, improving immune function by providing, exposure to beneficial microbiota. And this is very important as it relates to psychological restoration. So the green space can provide that respite for that overstimulated minds that we do have, especially when you're living in urban areas. So by considering green space as a way to protect us against mood disorders, neurotic disorders, stress-related issues, we have found that it protects us, and it can even provide long-term positive impact on how we're interacting in our environments at home, the community, the school, and even in our work. And so it is beneficial and so critical that we start thinking about reimagining our environments. And oftentimes that's not done because of concern of cost, but there are many, many cost-effective ways that we can do that. And we especially have to be sensitive to green space and inequality, because recently areas that are underserved will not always have access to the same nature or environments or park. And we learned that in South LA, there wasn't enough nature areas for children to even safely interact with nature. So it's very important that we are thinking about green space and light and nature when we're redesigning our buildings, and even the buildings where we're serving our children and families. That's one thing we did at Wellness. We said our buildings need to, welcome our children and our community. We need to bring light in, we need to bring nature in, we need to create environments that are promoting, emotional healing, physical healing, especially because of the health disparities that many underserved communities suffer from.
Thank you, Charlene, for framing that. I think you may have hit every single point that we want to hit broadly. Focus in a little bit. I want to move to Karen. And Karen, can you talk a little bit about how Charlene's description of the connection between health and nature connects with the work that you do at Root Down LA?
Yes, definitely. My name is Karen. I'm the executive director of Root Down LA, and I was a former youth participant in the early stages of Root Down LA. So I have a vast experience in being one of those participants that benefited working with Root Down LA now, and also just kind of creating these green spaces in the community. So as a youth-led nonprofit organization, we really take in mind all of the information and all of the needs of the youth that are with us when they come into our programming. So one of the things that they really cared about was having green spaces in the community, seeing that there was some gardens being installed and not tended to was a huge disconnect between the youth in the community and what we really know traditionally. We know that there's a huge culture of people who understand agriculture and understand that, being in an urban space, how we are in South LA, there's not a lot of opportunities for green spaces. So what we started to do for our first attempt to look for these green spaces in South LA became a challenge for us. We started with school gardens and community gardens. For the most part, they had been installed and never tended to, left vacant. So Root Down LA's vision and culture was to work in these green spaces that already existed, no matter what the conditions were, and revitalize the spaces with sustainability in mind. We narrowed it down to one thing. We realized we all eat. So at the end of the day, we know that these green spaces needed to be taken over. So we started to think like we need to start growing in them. And sustainability part comes with the resources in the garden to keep it alive, and it requires hands. So the youth component for us was a huge piece. Like we realized that we had an advantage. Our advantage was the next generation of youth that were going to take this movement to the next level. And so we started to look at putting these youth in the forefronts of these jobs and started building training sessions that talked about the areas of gardening, farming, and food justice. We identified that this is an opportunity to revitalize a culture and a tradition that was already there and like kind of buried because we live in an urban community. where we don't have a lot of these spaces. For most of the youth that we work with, they're from South America and from the southern states here in the United States, for which all of them have a rich culture in the agriculture sector as well. So we just wanted to really just take advantage of that and be able to give also the youth an opportunity to be the advocates to do these systems change in a community. For Root Down LA, identifying these green spaces was not just to bring affordable, local, and healthy food. It was also about creating safe spaces for youth. So going back to that mental health piece, having just a space where a kid can hang out underneath a tree, it's a huge piece of the well-being of the youth in our programs, knowing that they have an area where they can come and read a book and like do poetry and just really unwind. Living in an urban community, we are notoriously known for food deserts, and green spaces are very, very rare. And what we do at Root Down LA is that we identify these places. We work with community members who live in those nearby areas. We train the youth to oversee these spaces, and we build demand for healthier eating by showing people how to cook these vegetables and bringing in the supplies by showing the youth how to grow it immediately in their communities. So that way they feel empowered and they have it all within one network in one area.
So Karen, it sounds like we're actually creating the space to get some of these kids off of the technology and the devices that can be so destructive.
Correct.
I keep hearing the word community, and that's what I think about when I think about bringing nature into urban spaces. And Brandy, what is the connection in your community and your work with nature and gardens?
Great question. So I will say, for me, Garden Butterfly is a for-profit business, but I've structured it to be for community as well. So with doing that, me being a proud citizen, in Los Angeles from Compton, California, I'm proud of where I'm from. And being proud of that, I have to be part of the solution. So that's why I started, one of the reasons why I started my business was to be part of the solution. People do communicate, about the lack of food in our communities. But I said, you know what, if I want to be part of the solution, I want to see the positive aspects of South Central Los Angeles and Watts and Compton. And the positive aspects are there are homeowners in our communities who care, who have been here for generations, still own their homes. They want to, know how to design and install these gardens for the environment. They have the information, that traditional cultural information that has been passed down from generation about how to grow their own food. Well, how do they do that in the community? A lot of people feel that they can't afford it. I always say that. They feel that they can't afford it, or maybe they can afford it. Well, as part of the solution, I like to talk to people within my community and say, even though you can't afford it this way, start small with raised garden beds. That's being part of the solution, and just seeing the positive aspects of it. And finally, I'd like to say, as far as the mental health part of it, we can do that with gardens. Access to these gardens, using them as a tool to address the mental health issues. It's real in all communities, okay? Not just urban or underserved communities. We are aware of this. As landscape professionals, as scientists and health professionals, how can we work together to create or encourage people to use their home gardens in regards to access for mental health? So, yeah.
Thank you, Brandy. And I mean, you've told me stories of just your garden alone on your street has inspired community gatherings, and just community gatherings alone create resilience hubs in a neighborhood where there wouldn't otherwise be one.
Absolutely.
I want to talk to Garrett and Clifford about the technology and innovations, but before I go there, I'd like to ask Rachel. Rachel, there's a lot here. What is your broader scope of work, and how does it help solve some of these problems that we're hearing, and tell us what's going on?
Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity to kind of step back and see the forest for the trees from a city level, and it's a perspective I'm definitely able to provide. But I just want to say, Charlene and Karen and Brandy, it's such a pleasure to hear your perspectives and to hear your approach to your work. It's really an honor to be on this panel with you and sit here with you with pride. But yeah, so, you know, I got into urban forestry a number of years ago, and it really stemmed from having the absolute privilege of growing up in a well-canopied neighborhood. And I had recognized that my whole life, knowing how much I love trees and seeing them and seeing how they impact my health in my neighborhood. And so I kind of got to the city and started realizing that with the science and evidence that was coming out, the canopy of the city is not equitably distributed, right? There are parts of the region, Council District 15 and 8 and 9 and parts in the Valley, communities that are going to be hardest hit by climate change and have very little shade protection. So I'm hearing what Charlene and Karen and Brandy are saying, and really thinking too about not just historical corrections that we can make at a city level and our responsibility to plant trees and protect communities, but also for the future, really looking toward trees as a climate mitigation strategy. How are we going to protect and make sure that our communities and the folks who are going to be most vulnerably hit by climate change are going to be protected? And trees are an awesome way to do that. I like to call trees just like the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, the tree is the powerhouse of the city. It's kind of one of the most cost-effective public infrastructure systems that we can invest in to protect our communities, to ensure better public health, mental health, carbon sequestration. The benefits of trees go on. And so City Plants as an organization is a nonprofit city partner, but we work with city agencies and a whole slew collaborative of nonprofit partners, including the LA Conservation Corps, Tree People, Northeast Trees, Koreatown Youth and Community Center, a Cleaner Greener East LA, and LA Beautification Team. We work with these folks to plant trees in communities and focus our efforts particularly on low canopy areas. And we do that by giving free trees away to Angelinos. So anyone can go to the City Plants website and order up to 7 free shade trees to be delivered straight to their door, and you get to plant them. But we also will plant free street trees, knowing that the city process can be a little bit difficult to get the permitting. We'll handle all of that for you. And it's a completely free program available to anyone who lives in the city of Los Angeles. As long as you agree to water and steward and care for your tree, we will hook it up. And we kind of operate with this core mission and understanding that we want to ensure equal access to trees and their benefits in the city, and are really on a mission to solve the issue of canopy inequity in the city to protect our communities and build a climate resilient Los Angeles at the end of the day.
It's amazing. What I'm hearing and what I actually believe is that some trees, some good landscaping choices, and some food gardens can solve equity issues, health, climate change. And as we move into the climate piece and technology and innovation, Garrett and Clifford, you guys have been doing studies in this realm and actually looking for solutions to some of these problems. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so in our work in the Weather Center, we actually got an EPA Green Alley grant in order to implement infrastructures that would help sustainability. So as part of the program, we look for these solutions. So one of the solutions that I looked for in the Green Alley program was air purifying fabric called the breath. And so that was one aspect to kind of purify the air in these green alleys. And of course, we want to beautify the alleys in order to just increase the community satisfaction and beautification of the streets that were, or alleyways that are usually dumped on, and kind of just throw, you know, sometimes people just dump trash in these areas, and people avoid them rather than use them. So we're trying to make them useful by implementing these kinds of trellises that would beautify the landscape and create murals as well. And so one of the ways we wanted to increase greenery is to add sort of, so it's kind of a disaster plan, because we want a holistic solution to add food resources. So let's say there's a big earthquake and the power is out. We have this green alley that's supplied by solar panels and buys food to the community when the community is in need. And so we want to kind of, so in terms of technology, we could use like weather stations and environmental monitors. And what those do is they keep track of how much solar radiation is hitting this area, as well as how much moisture does the soil have, and other sensors such as that can tell us how our plants are growing, how many food can we produce in this area, and the data that we can receive just from this alleyway of greenery that we created. And with 3D modeling such as Revit and mapping with ArcGIS, we can pretty much transport these data and information straight to the community.
That's amazing. And Garrett, you talked a lot about this pilot program in your presentation and how important it was to involve the people who live in those unseen spaces that Clifford was talking about. Can you give us some examples of how you engaged the community and where that leadership was coming from?
So yeah, I do believe it's really important to engage the community that you're trying to transform, because people do not like outsiders coming in and just instructing them on what to do. And it's also just not sustainable. If you build something and the community has no input in that, it won't be sustainable, it'll die. And a lot of you mentioned some of the gardens didn't succeed until you started involving community members. And so I think that that's really important. And one of the techniques we used, we have 7 green alleys, and we have a captain for each of the alleys. And so that captain is from that neighborhood and that community. And so we teach them and involve them in the process of transforming their alleys into a safer, greener area. And we have them attend workshops, well, before COVID, but we're gonna probably do them online. Attend workshops. We have a lab at the Pueda Center where it has 3D printers. They'll be able to utilize our computers to create designs, and also the interns and the other members of the organization will mentor them on just having a hands-on approach. So it's led by them, it's built by them, and it's sustained by them. And once that's going, we'll be there in the background as a mentor and a resource to help them sustain their alleys. Also, they can come up with stuff that we wouldn't even thought of. They could have been, oh, well, the reason why we just dump stuff here in the alley is because the trash doesn't come by in X amount of days, or it doesn't pick up bulk items, or we don't know how to pick up bulk items. Well, we can connect with their contracted waste management person to pick up their bulk items more often. Just little things like that that you wouldn't know unless you engaged with the community on that. We're trying out a survey and other outreach programs. The problem is language gaps and culture, and also it's a working class neighborhood. So we have to make sure that we adapt our workshops on their time frame. We talked about before the conference with Rachel, she mentioned that there was mentioned daycare and for parents to be able to go to these workshops, but we provide childcare for the parents so they can attend and be able to actually participate, and it won't be a hindrance.
Wow, that's amazing. What would you say are some of the common misperceptions about bringing nature into the city and making it equally distributed?
Is that a question for, oh,
Anybody who'd like to answer, just jump in.
okay. Well, I will respond to that by saying pollinators are a key component of our nation's agricultural system and the biodiversity that sustains it. So we are part of that biodiversity. We have a role in taking care of the environment. When we build city gardens, community gardens, school gardens, we should think about the insects and the pollinators. So key garden butterfly. That is, I am a proponent for saving these cute beings that are responsible for the fruits and vegetables that we eat. So when we talk to our clients or potential clients, or when we communicate with each other, the role of pollinators and wildlife should be part of that conversation. And when we're thinking about building community gardens, school gardens, or home gardens, focusing on health issues, you got to think about the pollinators. When you're designing these gardens with paths and you're thinking about the plants that you want to design in, you know, those California native plants, which are necessary. We live in Mediterranean climate here on the coast of California. So you don't need to drive down and just see rocks of gravel, just these heat islands. You want to install those native plants. You can use drought appropriate Mediterranean plants, using mulch, designing in systems with, let's say, what am I trying to say here? Irrigation systems, so you're not wasting water. It all works together. We all work together in providing for wildlife and providing for pollinators so we can have these beautiful gardens. We can go sit in these gardens and be happy and, you know, just relieve stress. Smell the flowers that are a result of the pollinators that have pollinated these plants. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you for jumping in on that. Garrett, did you have something to say?
Oh, yeah, just to go off what you were saying, that you're right. I think one other thing that ties in is having planning, just this is what we've always done. And then so it's like, okay, we've always just built structures and we always just paved it over and it's cookie cutter at this point. And to change people's minds into thinking about pollinators, it's just something that people probably generally think about. Like they see a bee, run away from it because they want to get stung, but realize the importance of bees and butterflies and hummingbirds, all the pollinators that you have in a city and why they're important and how we don't need concrete everywhere. We can have spaces that are green and it's okay if they're a little wild looking and it doesn't have to be always manicured. And I think that also breaks up the geometric structures we all have. You have wildlife sparks creativity subconsciously, and I don't mean that in a spiritual way. I just mean like in a way like Charlene was talking about with mental health. You look at these flowers and plants, and you start to identify that these are living things, and I'm a living thing, so I can connect with that, and it brings up stuff that you wouldn't normally think of.
Charlene, I'll move over to you. I just want to a couple of things you guys said that Brandy, you talking about pollinators and natives, and Garrett, you sort of talking about this life cycle. It sounds like LA could really have its very own identity through its landscaping. And not only that, but foster the stewardship that we so badly need in this city. Is that what I'm hearing? Charlene, did you want to add to what Garrett was saying?
Yeah, I was just gonna, again, I mentioned earlier about how mental health is a universal issue and it knows no boundaries when somebody is, struggling with a mental health issues. And when I say it knows no boundaries, it makes no difference, gender, ethnicity, socioeconomic status. It's anyone can be impacted by a mental health issue. And recently, the pandemic has, really brought to our attention and has revealed the inequalities that exist when it comes to access to green space. And there have been many petitions, that, as you know, to keep, our parks open, our gardens for the public use, because it is so crucial to well-being. And we know that people that come from more affluent areas, they have access to green space all around them. They can live in neighborhoods where they're, they have beautiful parks and nature and trees and everything that they need for their own physical and emotional well-being. And and we also know that those areas that are most deprived benefit the most from local green space compared to the most affluent areas, because we're in our community more on a day-to-day basis, interacting and engaging with our community, with our neighbors, with our local churches, our businesses. So this is why it is so important that we are leading this effort to bring green space to all communities, so that every child, every adult, every family member can benefit from that physically and emotionally. And so it should be accessible, easily accessible to everyone, regardless of what neighborhood you're living in. And so this is why we do need to be advocates and lead that effort, so that funding can come to these areas that can benefit the most. And because this is an opportunity to reinvest in the dignity of every community through new design, reimagining our neighborhoods, architecture, green space. As you mentioned earlier, Cassie, this is an opportunity to advocate on the behalf of all communities, to be leaders and bring green space to every neighborhood that needs to have green space, because of the huge long-term positive outcome it can have.
I'd like to respond to add to Charlene, if that's okay.
Please.
Oh, thanks, Charlene, for that. And see, that is what makes LA so fly, fantastic, and just fabulous. We are we are part of the 5 regions of the world with the Mediterranean climate. I mentioned that earlier. So when we think about where we are, it's an advantage. When we create these green spaces, going back to what I was saying about the flowering plants, we have to keep that in mind where we are. We don't have to, just design in deserts. In a Mediterranean climate. It's not necessary. So because we're at that advantage, we have all these flowering plants that we can incorporate, those native plants, those manzanitas, ceanothus plants, okay? We can include succulent. My specialty is a succulent gardens. So you can include that in these green spaces, whether it's a community. My home, I use my garden as a community garden just for my neighborhood. You can come around the garden. I have tags so people can see, oh, what plant is this? You see a bee by that plant. Can I plant that? You most certainly can. Do you want to design a garden with less bees? Well, you may not want to plant lavender. So these are just things, we're in the Mediterranean climate. We are at an advantage here, so we should use that and work together to use that.
What I'm hearing is that there's this pride of ownership that we need to build in Los Angeles, and with those gardens comes the pride of ownership. Does the opportunity, I've heard schools, community, youth, does the opportunity for more jobs for African Americans, youth, minorities in these communities lie somewhere embedded in this discussion?
It actually should. But to me, it starts with the youth in school. it starts with, even the teachers, knowing about African American history in the United States, about, our history, what are our contributions. George Washington Carver, I mean, he was an innovator, a chemist, a scientist. When we talk about regenerative gardens and sustainability, he was at the forefront of that. So many of the people whom we give credit to now, which we should, they got a lot of information from him. What about the people who came over during the Great Migration? Like for me, I'm a direct product of the Great Migration. My grandmother came from the South. There's a very important history behind that. So when these people came from the South they journeyed away from the Jim Crow South for a better life. They went north and west. So my family came west. That's why we're here in California. Well, they brought those survivals of gardening, culture, that Southern hospitality, So we know how to do this, but unfortunately, I believe that it isn't being taught in the schools, and it can be. So we should all just, be unified and understand that we're here in California, we're here in Los Angeles. There's a lot of different people here, a lot of different cultures. We all have a stake in this, and we've contributed to the environment, to landscaping, engineering, agriculture. But you just have to want to know that. You have to want to read and study. Now, I have a book. I didn't say I was going to do this, but I'm going to do this now. This book right here is called The Warmth of Other Suns. Okay? With that question, just learning about the migration of African Americans from the South and how they spread out and why they left and the survivals that they brought. This isn't new to us. We know how to do this. So that's why we should work together and understand each other's cultures. And we can do this, and we'll be dope. LA will be just great. So, yeah.
I know the audience can't see all the panelists' heads nodding vigorously is talking. You wanted to chime in, and I will just give everybody a quick time check, and I was hoping to get to a few questions, and I'll just comment on the chat room really quickly. People are so inspired by this discussion, you guys. This is such an important conversation, and it's not happening enough at the beginning of projects or any conversations with principals or school districts. These conversations need to be happening more often at the start. Rachel, sorry, did you have something to say?
So much to respond to. My mind's just teeming with Brandy. That was so powerful. Thank you for sharing that. I wrote down the name of the book and plan on reading it. But the workforce development angle and the community-based approach, I can speak from, City Plants is interesting in that we straddle that kind of line between city entity and nonprofit. But we found that with urban forestry and stewardship of trees in order to increase equity, that not centering the voices of the communities we're working with doesn't work, right? No, of course that's the case. So we really, in Los Angeles, as we approach urban forest equity and these issues around equal distribution of trees, we're trying to do that not in a new gentrifying, trees are great, plop them down here way, but really by partnering with organizations and giving them resources, partnering with organizations that are already doing it well. And that's, just not reinventing the wheel, but and looking at organizations like Root Down LA, like Garden Butterfly, that are thriving and have it already figured out and can teach us how to do it better. But the workforce development piece too is so critical. I think City Plants we're actually embarking on this long journey to start our own nursery and start growing our own trees from seed, which historically we've been getting them from and procuring them from commercial nurseries. And as a part of that, we're hoping to pilot a workforce development program that has a curriculum and allows youth 18 to 24 to go through this program and learn a little bit about how to manage a nursery, how to grow trees from seed, how do you prune correctly. So trying to bring that full circle, knowing that the stewards of the urban forest start with the ones who are growing and connecting and caring for the trees, and that workforce development is so critical. And I also just wanted to share, I just threw it in the chat, but it's for folks who haven't seen it, a map that shows canopy distribution in the city put out by LMU and Tree People. It's a really powerful map. You can feel free to play around with it, but it's a great kind of just data set to harness and look at and see where are there trees in the city and where are there not, and why is that? And how do we go about rectifying that? So, yeah.
I'm going to mention, going off what you were saying about employment and how that can be like a job creator, it can allow people, for example, to utilize GIS to identify areas that need trees, planting, or demographics, a food desert. You can train people in that, and then they can develop a career in geospatial technology, as well as industrial design with our vertical trellises that we're building in the alley. If you have people just playing around with 3D printers and laser cutters and things like that, they might develop an interest in going into a trade school and continuing on beyond just the hobby in the city, or get into agriculture or things like that. So it sparks, there's actually a hummingbird out my window, speaking of nature. But yeah, it gets people involved in activities that they may not have thought was interesting, and maybe planting a tree from Rachel and realizing, hey, I like this. So, and then going forward and learning about it.
We have about 3 minutes, and I didn't even get into our conversation as it relates to the pandemic, but I do think that there are some very obvious things going on right now that you can infer from the discussion we've had. But I want to give everybody a chance to just sort of, I like to kind of maybe close with maybe a call to action of sorts by our audience. What organizations like yours need to make a greater impact in this discussion and in our communities, and get more people and a broader group of folks in this conversation? I know you guys all have exactly what you need, so throw it out there.
I will just start by saying that our teachers, our educators, our school systems, they need support. How we do that is, it's not just one simple answer to it, but it just needs to happen. And you do have those marginalized communities, and we have to, really focus in on that in order for, something different to happen. Because of COVID-19, how that's going to work, I have no idea. I'm not really sure. But as a collective, we can figure that out. But it is the education system. Once we, support the educators, give them the tools that they need. I mean, how are they going to operate virtually? You have those school gardens. Like, I worked with the school garden and it was thriving. And then here we go, COVID-19. So how can we support the education system with these school gardens? The school gardens are important because it's teaching, sustainability for those students who don't have home gardens, so they have it at school. It's just this whole domino effect. And I'll end by this. The next time you're in South Central Los Angeles and you just happen to be on the corner of Crenshaw and Florence, I want you to go on over to Hanks Market. On the side of a building, it has this huge, beautiful mural, and it says "Stronger Together." That's the only way we're going to be able to fix this. It's not one entity. It's not one person. We all have a part in this, and we have to do this together.
We're at time. If everybody wants to say one word to close out what you need, or one word to just show your sentiments, and before you do that, I just want to thank everybody for being here today. This is a conversation I just want to have all the time with so many different people, and we're not having it enough. So Charlene, take it.
Just that the green development is going to also fight against climate change.
Okay, Karen.
Continue to build demand for change. That would be the word that I use. Continue to build demand for change.
Garrett.
Collaborate.
Pardon?
Collaborate.
Clifford.
Teaming together for a solution.
Rachel.
Took the words right out of my mouth. Collaboration and fostering community partnerships, I think. Empowering each other and others. That's empowerment.
All right, well, thank you guys. And I hate to say goodbye, but apparently we have to. Okay, have a great day and enjoy. If you guys want to hop onto my panel at 11 for Firewise Landscaping, I hope to see you there. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.